Hey everybody, this is kind of my start to intermediate to advanced Unity C Sharp programming series. And we're going to start off a little bit basic where we're just learning how to use keyboard input to move, rotate, and scale in a game object. So let's start off by right clicking on our assets folder here, go to create folder, and let's just name this underscore scripts. The reason for the underscore is because it moves our scripts folder to the top of our folder list here. And that's important because I use my scripts folder along with my art folder the most, so I usually put underscores in the front to do that. Let's go ahead and right click, go to create, and we're going to create a model behavior script. And I'm just going to rename this game object controller. Let's create a cube to control. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to 3D objects and just select a cube. I'm going to hit F to focus on this. Oops. Notice when I created it, it gave me the option to rename it right away. So it named it F. I'm just going to rename that cube again. I'm going to move my cursor into the scene over here, and then I'm going to hit F to focus, and that'll let us zoom in. And I'm assuming at this point you know how to rotate and move around the Unity interface. If not, just watch a basic interface video. I have a bunch of them, or watch any of my other ones I overly explain. I'm going to pause the video and just double click this game object controller script, and I'm going to do a side by side with my script and my controller. I'm using Rider as my IDE. You can use Visual Studio or Rider. Now if you go to edit and you go to preferences here and you click on external tools, double check that you have Visual Studio or Rider set here as your primary IDE. Otherwise, when you double click it, you'll be confused as to why your code isn't opening in Rider or there's no connection there. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this, and next when we return, you'll see the side by side. All right, with your cube selected inside of your inspector, what I'm going to do is just lock it for a moment and grab this game object controller script and drop it on here. The reason for locking it is if I don't have it locked and I click on my cube and then I select my game object controller here and release my mouse, the inspector will change to the attributes of the script. You could also leave it unlocked, but just hold the left mouse button down and drag it on here, and that'll also drag it on there, but it just makes it a little bit easier to lock it. So now we know this game object controller is attached to this cube. What I want to do first is create a bunch of variables that are just going to be the parameters for my move speed, my rotation speed, and my scale speed. Instead of me typing it all out, I'm just going to pause the video, type it out, and just have you guys go through it. All right, so some of you might not be familiar with line 5 here, and what this is this is a way of defining inside of your script what a set of attributes or what a function or method might be. You don't really see these used a lot for functions and stuff like that, but really you could. I mean, it's not going to hurt anything. And the more that I work at these different studios, whether it's Amazon or Netflix or whatever, they're generally pretty cool about, believe it or not, changing different coding conventions or doing things like that. As long as the code works, it's readable and it's clean, they're not going to beat you up, despite what you might hear from maybe professors or other classmates or things online. They're actually wonderful environments, in my opinion, to work at. So anyway, so here's our header. And I just have it named movement settings. And you could see here now it created a header in my script called movement settings. And what I would suggest is pause the video, type it out. Try not to use AI for a while, because what happens to a lot of my students is they'll start using agents or AI, like things that sort of auto-populate it for you. And they don't get that tactile feeling of coding that connects to the brain when you're typing or handwriting things out. I used to, when I was first taking programming classes, I would actually handwrite, like take notes on all of that, then I would type it, and that helped to reinforce it in my brain. So anyway, there's 3 variables here. One is a private, and it says move speed, and then there's these other attributes. What you'll notice here too is I have this thing, if you haven't seen it before, called the serialized field. And what this allows me to do is expose private variables inside of my script here. So for example, if I got rid of this serialized field here and I deleted it, and I hit Control S, and I go inside of here, you'll notice that move speed will now disappear. And now I just have rotation speed and scale speed. If I hit Control Z and I add that back in and I save that, you'll see that now move speed has been added back. And that's a pretty cool feature because we want to hide or protect these variables so they're only used in this script, and that's why we mark them as private. Now that's kind of a intermediate or basic programming paradigm. I'm just adding it in case you don't know it, because sometimes these videos, there are people from different skill sets watching it. The next thing I want to do is I'm just going to highlight this update function, hold the Alt key down, and press the up arrow key. I'm sorry I'm not using a Mac, so that probably doesn't work. It might be Command Alt or whatever. You don't necessarily have to move your update above start. I'm just doing it because I'm going to be using my update method next to call a bunch of functions. So something I like to do too is I like to just write the names of the functions that I think I'm going to need. So for example, I'm going to want to control movement speed, rotation speed, and scale speed. So I just created 3 function calls. Notice there are no functions, and that's why I'm getting this red error here that have been created. There is no handle movement, there is no handle rotation, there's no handle scaling. But I know I'm going to want to handle something that does anything with movement. I'm going to want to handle something that does rotation. I'm going to want to handle something that does with scaling. Now what you can do, again, if you're a Mac or a PC, is if I hold control and hit period, I don't know if it's command period or whatever on a Mac, I can actually have it create a method called handle movement. Something else you could do is if you go over to this little light bulb and you click on it, you can see that that'll also bring it up. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, let it handle that, and then do the same for each one of these. So control period, create this, control period, and let it create this. Oops. I think I'm hitting the other one and it's bringing up my AI options. So now you can see that it automatically created these 3 methods for me. This is nice. Again, if you're completely new to creating methods, there's 2 parts to a method. There's the call, and then there's the creation of the method. So this calls it. And if you're not, just as a refresher, update gets called every frame. Okay, and I get into frames and all that stuff later. So because of the order I created them, here's handle movement, or handle rotation, handle scale. Now, generally, I like to have them in the order. So like if I highlight all of these, hold Alt, and I move them up above handle movement, just make sure that, you don't by accidentally do something like this where you mess up the order of your method and you put one method inside of another one. Just be conscious of when the construction of a method. So let me delete this inside stuff here. You have essentially the access modifier, your return type, which is, we'll get into that stuff later if you're not comfortable with functions. I'm going to repeat some of that, but again, I'm trying to focus more on intermediate and advanced. And then you have the name essentially of your function, and then you have parameters that are going to get passed in. Inside of here, your open and close curly braces, this is the body of your function or method. This is what you're going to put code in that's going to do something. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to put in some code inside of this handle movement method. Now, this is the old, quote unquote, old system. You could still use it to make games. There are games out in the marketplace that still have this type of code in there, but eventually we want to get into using the new Unity input system. So what we have here is we have a variable called horizontal. And then we have another variable here, and they're both of type float, which just means a decimal number, and it's storing this input.getAxis horizontal and this input.getAxis vertical. Now, where is this coming from? Well, input.getAxis horizontal is a keyword. So if I go to edit, and I believe it's project settings, input manager, and I open this axis up, you can see there's a horizontal here, and there's another horizontal down here. Now, this horizontal keyword is mapped to my left and right arrow keys, and the vertical is mapped to my up, down, and S and Y. Up and down being my up and down arrow keys, and then my S and W keys. So this creates like a WASD, control. So all this variable is doing is as I push the WASD keys, it's storing the pressure, or it's storing whatever's in horizontal and vertical. And I can show you this just briefly. If I type print, I'm going to hit tab to let it do that, to auto complete that code for me. And I save this. If I open up my console here, and let's see, window and general, and then console, and it's also Control-Shift-C. If I press play, and remember, you have to click in the window. So sometimes I'll get students who click, who not implement exception. So I might be missing the method operation. Oh, these ones are not implemented. That's okay. We have this in there anyway, this exception. So anyway, horizontal, right? So if I press my A key, you can see, or my D key or my WS key, it is moving. But let's put this back on and remove that thing. What it's saying here is it's storing in this float value. It's printing to the scene 0, which means we're not moving, right? So, but as I push my keys, the W or S key, let's clear this for a second so you can see this again. My A and D key, you can see it's pasting, it's just pushing this position out. It's printing that to this console. So it's storing that value of whatever it's being pushed. So where does the negative and the positive come from? Well, if I reset the position of my cube here, and let me select my main camera, move it in just a little bit so you could see that. On the x-axis, if I move it to the left, notice it goes negative, right? So I'm going left and right. Oh, that's my camera, sorry. Here's my cube. If I move it to the, oh, I guess this is the left here. If I move it to the left, you'll see that it goes negative. If I move it to the right, it goes positive. That's important because later we're going to be playing with that value. So all this is doing now, just to help you understand that, is it's let's kind of bring that up a little bit. So all this is doing is this horizontal is storing that value, the vertical is storing this value. Now this vector 3 direction is just a variable, but it can store 3 values, an x, y, and z variable. That's what this is storing. And so what we're saying here is, hey, we're allocating new memory to this vector, and we're going to store the horizontal in here and the vertical in the z-axis. So this is the x, y, and z. Now if you're copying the code, don't copy these light gray translation. This is put in there just to show you what the thing does. So if you're coding this along, do not type in things like translate. Now this code here, transform, is referring to this component here, transform, and then we're looking to translate the position here, and that's direction, move speed, and time.delta time. I think, and so what's happening now is every update, which means every frame, as I'm pushing these WASD keys, it's constantly calling this method here, and within this method, this line of code is going to move our cube around. So in the next video, because we're already at 12 minutes and I wanted to make these 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to handle scaling.